The world of Westeros, King's Landing, The Wall, the Iron Islands and the like have become household names since 2011, when George R.R. Martin's beloved books became Game of Thrones the TV show. With its mix of violence, sex, intrigue and deception, Game of Thrones were all anyone talked about. Every fan tried to predict what was going to happen, right up to the arguably disappointing ending. It may not have finished how fans wanted it to, but it's safe to say Game of Thrones had some of the most disturbing and enthralling scenes ever shown on TV. We're here to count down our top 10 Game of Thrones moments, but first, here are 10 Thrones facts. Hit it. There it is. Number 1. Author George R.R. Martin's wife has said that she would leave him if he ever killed off Arya or Sansa.
The man who passes the sentence should swing the sword.
Number 2, according to Kit Harington, who played Jon Snow, his performance in the rejected pilot episode is so bad that the creators often jokingly threatened to release it online if he complained too much.
Fire cannot kill a dragon.
Number 3, when Jason Momoa, Drogo, first met Emilia Clarke, Daenerys, he rugby tackled her to the floor of the Belfast hotel, yelling "Wifey!" Momoa also made her feel comfortable during the wedding night scene by wearing a pink furry sock over his genitals, much to Clarke's hilarity.
A lion doesn't concern himself with the opinions of a sheep.
After filming her final scenes as Daenerys, Emilia Clarke got a tattoo of 3 dragons on her wrist.
And there is only one thing we say to death. Not today.
Sophie Turner, Sansa, and Maisie Williams, Arya, both got matching tattoos of the date 07/08/09, the day they both found out they were both on the show.
Where's the god of tits and wine?
Oh, where is the god of tits and wine? Jack Gleeson based Joffrey on Joaquin Phoenix's Commodus from Gladiator.
Lannister always pays his debts.
George R.R. Martin's confirmed that the words of House of Bolton are "our blades are sharp," most likely because of the Boltons' history of flaying their enemies alive.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
According to actor Ian Glenn, Jorah Mormont, to avoid spoilers leaking from the set, security was so tight actors had to read the scripts from protected iPads.
It's hard to put a leash on a dog once you've put a crown on its head.
Throughout the series, they used very dark lighting to avoid having to add CGI, particularly evident in the whole of Series 8.
Dracarys.
And finally, number 10, by the end of its run, Game of Thrones became the most Emmy-nominated show in television history with 161 nominations and 59 wins. Hodor, indeed. So, we are here, ladies and gentlemen, to sort out our greatest moments in Game of Thrones history. And I'm very happy to say that we are joined by Peter from the Movie Duels Podcast. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Pav. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you, sir. Someone new to our pod. It's always nice. And it's always, I love speaking to other podcasters because it then means I've got a new podcast to listen to as well, which I've done. I've listened to a few of your episodes. And so it's always great then to put a face to the voice because I've been listening to your voice for the last couple of days. And it's always nice to do that. Firstly, we'll talk about your podcast. Mm-hmm. So the Movie Duels Podcast, how long have you been doing it for and where did the idea come from?
So Movie Duels, well, it started, we've been running just over 2 years now. And it started, I had a friend who I used to work with and I sort of moved jobs, but we were both big cinema nerds, cinephiles. So we always used to talk about films, and we started like sort of recommending films for each other and stuff like that. And we'd sort of talk films all the time, and became really good friends. And then I moved to another job, and we sort of stayed in touch. But as you do when you move jobs and stuff, you don't really stay properly in touch. But I sort of said to him, look, we need to do something like that's going to force us to stay in contact, and I think we should do a podcast. So we came up with this concept, which was basically we would pick a subject, the best or worst or overrated, underrated, scariest, grossest, whatever film of a particular genre or whatever it may be. And then we'd each pick a film that we thought best fit that subject, and then sort of, a standoff with each other with our two choices. So then Liam, basically, who was my original co-host, we did 4 episodes, started to put them out, and he was very much like, I'm not feeling it. I don't really like doing it, but I really love doing it. So I sort of reached out to some internet forums that I was a member of, and managed to find 3 co-hosts, basically. So I have 4 co-hosts that I have on like a rotating basis that come on and go up against me, and we've done different iterations of it over the last few years. And yeah, so that's Movie Duel.
So the actual idea of it, of pitching 2 movies together, has it made you look back on some movies that you'd forgotten about, or how good they were, or how bad they are? Or
yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's really sort of opened my eyes to a number of different things. Revisiting some films that I really enjoyed when I was younger, or for, when I've only sort of watched them on, thinking, oh, that's really good. Recently, we did the worst Stephen King adaptation, where 2 of my co-hosts sort of picked. It was their choices. And Tarquin picked Thinner, which I remember seeing when I was a teenager and thinking it was really good. But, rewatching it with older eyes and maybe more sort of critical eyes, it's a really bad film. So, but then it's also opened my eyes to some fantastic films. Again, Tarquin picked a film. We did an episode about biker movies, and he chose this film called Psychomania, which was like a 70s Britsploitation occult film about a biker gang, and it was just absolutely bonkers, but I just fell in love with it. So it's really sort of it's been an interesting ride so far.
I listened to one of the episodes that I listened to was the 70s comedy movies, because we've actually got coming up, we're recording top 10 70s comedy movies in a few weeks' time. And it was Airplane versus Heathers, I think it was. Was it 70s? Or
80s, 80s, yeah.
Sorry. And
yeah, no, we did I think we did a 70s romance.
Right.
70s rom-com, I think it was.
But there's for me, I was listening to it with the caveat in my head of every second that the podcast went by that, I mean, Airplane is one of my favourite films of all time. Yeah. And I don't think I've even seen Heathers, but I think that I can't remember the name of the lady that was against you on it, but I think even by the end of it, she was saying that Airplane was a much funnier movie than Heathers. Oh yeah, we're quite a subdued bunch. There's no mass arguments. I think there's been 1 or 2 sort of tense moments and stuff, but we generally sort of, it's quite it's certainly not Game of Thrones, let's put it that way. But I do have a couple of other podcasts as well, which I'll just very quickly mention, because I don't want to take up too much time talking about my other podcast projects. But so Vanessa, one of my co-hosts on, and obviously in Movie Duel we have something that's called, we call it the X-Files Connections, because I'm a big fan of the X-Files. And we always sort of mention actors that are in the films that we're discussing if they've been in the X-Files. So myself and Vanessa started an X-Files podcast called the So-Called X-Files Podcast, which we're currently in season 2 of that, discussing some of our favourite episodes. And I very recently started a new music podcast called 3 Men and a Mixtape, which is myself, Ben from another podcast called Film Busters, and a wonderful guy called Sean Panda Nicholson, in which we create playlists for various different subjects. We've done Halloween, Christmas, a happy playlist, and a playlist of covers so far. That's fairly new. Well, we'll quite happily put all of the links on the show notes, so if people want to delve into those, they absolutely can. One thing I have forgotten to do, which I'll do in a second, but first of all, we want to say hello to Christina, who is our latest Patreon top head. She's got the top of the tower, so level. So we will be speaking to her in the future as a guest on the pod. So thank you very much, Christina, for your support. We need to do this. Oh, if I press the button right. See, this is where sometimes it doesn't work. Why? I don't know why that didn't come out.
Pop quiz, hot shot.
That's the wrong one. It's that one. See what I mean?
Lisa's challenge.
Now, any normal podcast would have edited all that shit out. I'm just going to leave it all in. So, Lisa's challenge is basically how many duplicates we're going to get in our top 10. So how many do you think we're going to get the same today, Peter?
I'm going to go for 5, straight down the middle.
Okay, right. I'm going to go for 4 then. I'm going to go for 4. Okay, Game of Thrones. Where is it? I mean, if you think you've done a podcast on the X-Files, where is it in the pantheon of TV shows for you?
Oh, I think it's definitely in my top 10.
Right.
I think I was quite late to the whole sort of furore of Game of Thrones. It was when I got with one of my ex-partners, and she'd watched the first 3 seasons, and I'd never sort of, because I'm a self-confessed geek. I'm a massive nerd, but fantasy's always been something that I've not delved into, massively. I don't go for everything that is fantasy. I'm not a big Dungeons and Dragons-y type fan. I like Lord of the Rings and some of the old classics, Willow and Legend and films like that. But it never really sort of interested me, this, because I thought it was just sort of wizards and sword fighting and stuff like that. Mm. And so she sort of got me into it and said, no, you need to start it. And I think at that point it was close to the start of the 4th season, and we binged watched the first 3 seasons in 2 weeks, if I remember rightly.
Wow, that's heavy stuff.
And I have revisited it, and I will admit that I don't mind the ending of Game of Thrones.
That's cool. We will discuss that. Now, so are you someone that all? I mean, my wife loves Game of Thrones, so she mainlines it all the time, and the House of the Dragon and all that, and she knows the history and she knows all the character names and the place names. And the one thing that always gets me with fantasy stuff, especially Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, is I never know whether they're talking about a place or a person when they're really getting down to the nitty gritty of things. Are you somebody that sort of you know where you are in it and who it is and who they're talking about and where they are?
Not always. I mean, I've probably watched it start to finish 4 times, I think.
Oh, right, okay.
But not quite enough to be, I wouldn't say that I am a number 1 fan. This isn't something that I, massively geeked out about or still do. I think I just appreciate it for the sort of epic television that it is, rather than being a fanboy for it, if that makes sense.
Right. I will say, for my own clarification, when we started watching it, I think I watched the first 2 seasons, and then I sort of dropped off a little bit, and my wife sort of powered through and carried on. I'm not saying powered through like it was a bad thing, but she carried on, and then I picked it up again in season 5, maybe season 5 or 6, and very luckily there's a guy on YouTube called the Man of Recaps. He will recap a whole season in 15 minutes. So I cheated for season 3, 4, and I think 5, and watched his videos. I didn't binge it like you did, so I apologise. But I have seen, I've got things from season 5, season 4 in my top 10. But mine are mainly, we'll get to that. Talking about the ending, then. I was thinking about it today, actually, that I can't think now of a TV show since that it was that everybody after every episode were going online making videos and saying this is what's going to happen. The water cooler talk was always, I think this is going to happen and that's going to happen, and it was everybody was speculating all the time. And I think that was the thing that made people disappointed, because everybody had this idea in their head of what was going to happen. And spoilers, we're going to spoil the shit out of Game of Thrones. So if you haven't seen it or whatever, tough shit, really. Were you in that same sort of? Were you sort of surmising what you think was going to happen and who was going to die and how they were going to die and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I had an expectation, and I think what I sort of expected to to happen at the end, I think would have been a better ending. But because I always thought that the last season was it should have been backwards to what it was. Because obviously we had the two threats, the two story threads, which was the threat of the White Walkers and the fight for the throne, basically.
Yeah.
And I always think that it should have been the other way around. That the finale of the series should have been the fight against the White Walkers.
Yeah, and Arya killing the Night King seemed to me like a perfect way of finishing it, because that was what the whole story was about, that winter was coming, and this it was so frustrating. And the fact, like I said in the clips, in the facts, especially that one episode where it was the White Walkers fighting, the castle, everything was so dark you couldn't see what the hell was going on.
Yeah, I think they definitely. I think that last series definitely, even though some of the episodes were like an hour and a half long, it still felt very rushed. It's for this show that was so popular and so epic, it was like all of a sudden we're going to finish it after this season, and it just felt like they were just scrambling towards that ending rather than building it. And especially the ending we got with Daenerys, that felt we'd sort of got to a point with her, and then all of a sudden we're going to. Finish that really quickly as well, and there's going to be no further sort of developments with her character from defeating the White Walkers to burning the city, basically.
Yeah, and it was that flip moment where she decided to go batshit crazy. I can remember watching it and going, "No, come on, why?" It really.
Well, I didn't mind it. I mean, you got so. As we'll probably talk about when we go through this list, there's so much of this series that goes in ways that you don't expect. That's always been the beauty, I think, of Game of Thrones. It's never let you get comfortable.
Exactly, yeah. And also the fact that it kind of, along with The Walking Dead, you ended up getting desensitized by the violence in it, because it was as brutal as any 18 certificate thing I think I'd ever seen. And it was prime, well, maybe not prime time, but it's what HBO did, wasn't it? But it's HBO television. It was just ridiculous. Well, sex and the violence.
Absolutely. I mean, The Walking Dead it killed off so many of the popular characters that it had nobody left, so you didn't care about anybody.
Exactly.
And there were no stakes whatsoever.
That's true. Well,
apart from the ones with heads on.
Very good. Well done. I'm going to give you a ding for that. Well done. That's very good. Okay. Right then, Peter, kick us off with your number 10 Game of Thrones moment. Okay, so we're going right to the end of the series, and I believe, was the last episode, second to last episode. So this is from The Bells, Series 8, Episode 5, and this is Clegane Bowl, as it was christened on the internet. So this is the final showdown between the Hound and the Mountain. That's my number 5. That's my number. So we've started off one straight away. Look, well done.
Yeah. And so, I think it was just the perfect, one of the more perfect moments of those last couple of episodes. And it's how can you sort of finish this story because it's been boiling from the very first season. There's a lot of history there. We've had this epic 8-season-long performance from Rory McCann. And this is everything that he's been building towards. There's been minor arcs within his story, his moral compass shifting and becoming a much better man than he was in the start. But everything has led to this, and it's the same for the Mountain. He doesn't give a shit in that moment. The Maester tries to talk him down, say you've got to stay with the Queen, you've got to protect your Queen, and he just bashes the fuck out of him, basically. And in one fell swoop, and the Queen looks very much like the Queen's going to get it next, and she, her better head prevails, and she toddles off down the stairs. But just that moment, and some of the shots in that, specifically where the wall crumbles and the dragon flies across the top of the screen, it's just it's just so epic, and there's just no way. I don't think there's any other way that you could have finished that story and finished that arc with those two.
I think there were certain characters in that last season that you knew weren't going to walk away, and sail off into the sunset. And those two were two that you knew it's just who they were going to take down with them.
Yeah.
And the fact that that the Hound had become this like wolf and cub with Arya, and he was telling her, "You need to go. Go away. Just leave." And it was a beautiful moment, and the fact that he sort of made the decision by come on then, brother, and sort of he pushed them off the into a fiery pit. It was great. And I think the one thing about you can say what you want to say about the final season, but it always looked amazing.
Yeah.
The way that it was made was fantastic. I've got my my Stark cap on because myself and my wife went to Northern Ireland and did the whole tour.
Oh wow!
And it's fantastic walking down certain areas where they film certain bits. And if anyone gets a chance to go to Belfast and go and have a look, because it's really. It's so interesting just to go to the studios where they filmed it and all of that stuff. But great. So we've started off with the duplicate straight away. And I do feel like a lot of mine, I think you might win this, with 5. Anyway, my number 10 probably should be higher, but I'm going to go at number 10. And it is The Death of Ramsay Bolton, Series 6, Episode 9, Battle of the Bastards. One of the things that Game of Thrones do really well, but they didn't in the final season, was to give these people that you hate really good deaths, so you feel satisfied. You should never feel satisfied when someone dies, but when someone like Ramsay Bolton, who has been just one of the worst people for a few series, and even in that episode was just, and it's that smirk that I can't remember the name of the actor, but that smirk that he has. You want to smash your face, smash your hand in his face. You want to make sure that he suffers, and the fact that Sansa gets to deliver that in the most, and again she turns and has that wry little smile as she walks away to the sound of him being chomped on by his vicious and dogs that haven't eaten for like 3 weeks or whatever it was. It was just perfect. It was just a perfect way for a character to meet his end.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it, like you say, I think there was a few which we may discuss, of the deaths that maybe felt not quite bad enough. But yeah, that one was definitely, you can't think of much things worse than being eaten alive, basically, especially by your own dogs.
Your own dogs.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. Yeah, it was just so apt. Okay then, Peter, your number 9, please.
So number 9, going right back to Series 1, Episode 1, Winter is Coming, with Jaime pushing Bran out of the window.
Yes.
So, this, I think, it's because it is just such an important moment. I mean, the scene preceding that as well, I was sort of grouping this into one. So, this is very much, you're settled into, you've got a bit of horror at the start of that episode with the White Walkers and introducing those, and then the introduction of how the sort of kingdom works a little bit with the Starks and Robert Baratheon. But then this very final scene of the episode, it just sets you up so much for what you're going to get for the rest of the series. You have an incestuous sex scene, which for one is a massive taboo, and not something that you see depicted quite so graphically on television or in films, really, apart from, very extreme films. But you then follow that up moments later with effectively killing a child, which is another massive taboo in maybe not when this was on, but within the pantheon of television and cinema. It's something that you have to think very carefully about, and showing it with such in such a way that they do. It's very flippant. He does just, this line of, he has this sort of conversation with Bran about, he's basically saying he's a cheeky little scamp and all that sort of thing. And then, the things I do for love, and buff, he's out the window. And
it's very nonchalant. It's like there's no anger there, is it?
No.
And that's what that was. Again, that first season was very shocking in many ways. It did lots of stuff that you weren't expecting. And it's a great way to finish the first episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is it. This is what you're in for.
It's almost comedic, not going to be, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's almost comedic in the way that he does it. He kind of just shoves him and then turns round. Jamie, that's a good.
Because you're still reeling from this, because no matter what way you butter it, whether you're talking about a love story or whatever between Jamie and Cersei, it's an incredibly shocking moment. And to follow that up seconds later with throwing a kid out a window.
Yeah, and it basically sets out what Game of Thrones is going to be for you, isn't it? It's a perfect sort of first episode. Great one for number 9. My number 9, I'm going for Series 7, Episode 7, The Wall Falls. So this is when you had the Night King on Viserion the Dragon, and it was just a spectacular thing. And I can remember watching it with my wife, and when the wall is falling, and then just the hordes of White Walkers and you're thinking, oh my God, they are fucked. They are absolutely fucked now, because you've got thousands and thousands of these White Walkers, and they are just going to stream through the one thing that was keeping them separate from everybody else. And it was an amazing moment. And just that sort of blue ice that's going through instead of fire in Viserion, that's just exploding and destroying and killing all these people, and then the White Walkers just walking through. It was epic. The kind of thing that you'd like to see on a big screen as opposed to your TV.
And I think it really speaks to the visual effects of the whole of Game of Thrones, really, because you believe that there is a dragon that is breathing fire on this ice wall. It looks so real. It's just incredible. And the amount of time and money they must have thrown at the effects of this series is just incredible.
It would have been incredible indeed. So that's my number 9. Okay, your number 8, please, Peter.
So number 8, we're going a bit further back up the timeline for me. So Series 7, Episode 7, The Dragon and the Wolf. This is Littlefinger's execution.
That's my number 8.
Hey.
That is my number 8. Well done. Okay.
So, I mean, it's just so effective. Littlefinger's one of those characters that you've just been gunning for the whole 7 seasons prior to this. But you also kind of like him, and you like he's a character that you're very comfortable with, and you think right up until that moment that they're holding court that he's pulled the whammy on Sansa. Yeah, and
exactly.
For them to be able to still do that with the Littlefinger character, and even with Sansa after 7 series, is just incredible. It's just so inch perfect writing that you doubt that Sansa is going to stick with her sister. Even though you know that Bran's there and he knows everything, you still doubt it. And it's just that moment, and the look on Aidan Gillen's face is just incredible. And I think he's one of the unsung heroes in terms of acting in this series.
It's brilliantly directed, because the way that Sansa is looking at Arya with all of these charges, and then they sometimes cut to Littlefinger, and he's got that smug look on his face, like everything's coming together, everything's fine, and then just at the moment Sansa turns to Littlefinger, says, isn't that right, Lord Baelish? And the look on his face, and he goes, and then he's on his knees and he's pleading and begging, and the fact that then Arya just comes with so much confidence and just slits his throat. It's so rewarding. Not rewarding. It is rewarding. It's so good to see somebody like that who's a snake that finally gets his comeuppance.
And you mentioned about like other characters getting the comeuppance that you wanted them to get, and you could maybe argue that you wanted Littlefinger to get a more brutal comeuppance, but I don't think it, because it's them kind of playing his game. and they're pulling the wool over his eyes.
Yeah.
It makes for the perfect ending for his character and the perfect death, really, even though it's relatively short and sweet. But he's got nowhere to go. He's begging everybody. He's trying to pull in every favour that he's got at his fingertips, and nothing's working. And that's it. He's gone.
Satisfying was the word I was looking for. Okay, so that's my number 8 as well. So that's the second duplicate we've got. So your number 7 then, please, Peter.
Well, this was sat at my number 1 for a while, actually. But,
okay.
So this is from the episode The Mountain and the Viper, Series 4, Episode 8. I don't think that's right. Is it Episode 8? Anyway, The Mountain and the Viper, and it is the Viper versus the Mountain. So this is the fight against... God, his name's completely gone out of my head, and I haven't written it down. But it's the Mountain against Pedro Pascal's character, Oberyn. Yeah, Martell. That's it. Of course, it is. And I have just so many vivid memories of watching this episode as it aired on the night on whatever channel it was, and just for at least 10 minutes after the episode finished, just sitting there with my jaw on the floor because I couldn't believe how brutal it was. Because you have this fight. Obviously, it's Tyrion. It's to decide Tyrion's fate, and he's chosen Oberyn to fight for him against the Mountain. A seemingly unsurmountable task. And he gets one up at him, and he's got all the bravado, and he's effectively won the fight. But because of his quest for justice and for the Mountain to admit what he did and who told him to do it, he gets wrong-footed, and that's it. He's gone. But for one, it's the teeth flying out of his mouth and hitting the floor in a big gloop of blood, which just completely bothered me in the first place. Yeah. And the fact that he just explodes his head with his hands, and it's just a sight to behold. Yeah. And it bothered me for days.
It was one of those moments that was like before it, you always thought, well, there's nothing that Game of Thrones can do now that's going to shock me. Yeah. There is literally nothing. I've seen it all. And then you watch that, and it was, what the fuck? Oh, my God. And it's kind of...
It's brutal. Absolutely brutal.
If he hadn't have been so cocky, and he would have just won it. He would have just won it, and it would have been no problem at all. But, it didn't quite make my top 10, I must admit. But it's definitely in there as one of the most memorable moments, without a doubt. Okay, that's your number 7. My number 7, again, probably could be a bit higher. And we both sort of said this should have been the end of the whole series, but I'm going for Series 8, Episode 3, The Long Night, and Arya kills the Night King.
That's my number 6.
That's your number 6. Okay. Let's see. The actual physical part of it was beautifully done. It was really, really cleverly set up, and I love watching, like on YouTube, you'll watch the crowd reactions of them watching it. Yeah. And the fact that you think she's going to do it, and he turns round and catches her by her neck, and then she drops the knife, and then picks it up and then stabs him, which was a move that Rey copied in The Last Jedi as well. It was,
yes.
Which I thought was interesting. But it was a great way to... Because they were on again, the good side were on their ass in that fight. And then everything just collapsed, and and they won. But it seemed a perfect way to end it.
Yeah, I mean, it's you've got seasons worth of foreshadowing that go into this moment, and not all the way back to her getting the sword training, and the Hound showing her where the heart is and stuff like that. And I think it's in maybe the episode before where she has the sort of play fight with Brianna Tarth, and she does exactly the same move on her as well. But the meetings that she's had with Melisandre, and talking about the black eyes and blue eyes and green eyes, and it just it just made so much sense because, I think everybody would have expected that Jon Snow was going to be the man to kill the Night King, and he's nowhere to be seen at that point. But that whole episode is just so beautifully crafted, and we get so much emotion and pathos. It just within that sort of closing moments of the fight, because you've got Jorah Mormont who's passing away as this is sort of happening, and he's being killed. You've got this final lovely arc to Theon's story and Bran becoming what Bran's becoming.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just a perfect moment. It's absolutely the right choice.
I agree. I will say, in one of our old podcasts, a podcast we used to do a few years ago called Movie Heaven, I actually had Sirio Farrell, here in my shed.
Wow.
He came to our house, and we did a local Comic-Con. We did the Q&A stage for it, myself and Neil, my co-host. And he was one of the guys that came up and we interviewed, and we ended up getting him as a guest on the podcast. And then one day I can't remember, he must have been coming somewhere near, and we took him out for lunch, and then he came back. And then I also got my wife, I got her, because she's got all these Game of Thrones pop figures, and I got a special one made of Sirio Farrell, because you can't. For some reason, they never made a Sirio Farrell Game of Thrones, and I got him to sign it for her.
Fantastic.
So it's always like Miltos Urolomo. He's a lovely, lovely guy, one of the nicest guys I've ever met, and it was lovely to be able to sort of spend a bit of time with him.
It was amazing. That character was just, considering that he's in, I think, 1 and a bit episodes.
Yeah,
it just so memorable. So
good.
I can't remember which point it was, but I had a theory that he was going to come back into it, and I can't remember why. I think I thought he was going to end up being the faceless man.
Yeah, I think there was a few people online that said that as well. And I would have loved that. I would have loved to have seen him come back in it, because you never actually physically see him die, do you? In the show, you just hear them fighting with him with his wooden sword. Oh, bless him. Hello,
yes,
Miltos.
because I was convinced that God, his name's completely. Not Renly. The other Baratheon. Who's the one who...
Stannis,
that's it. Stannis Baratheon. See, I told you I'm not a massive geek.
No, I'm amazed. That's the only other Baratheon I know, so that was a good shot for me.
I was convinced that Stannis was coming back, because you don't see him die either.
Right, there you go, see. So that was your number 6. So that's our third... Our third duplicate so far. My number 6, again, this was seeing somebody at the lowest of their low, and I'm going for Series 5, Episode 10, Mother's Mercy, and this is Cersei's Walk of Shame. Because she needed to have some kind of... I mean, she has a few sort of dips, obviously, of things bad happening to her, but she was such an evil woman that it was nice to see her. And obviously, at the time... we didn't know that the person that was making her walk down was this gorgeous Hannah Waddington that became amazing in Ted Lasso and places like that. It's
incredible, isn't it?
It is incredible. But it was great to see her get some kind of comeuppance.
Yeah.
And again, talking about the end of it, that's one of the things I was really disappointed in that she never got the death that I felt she deserved to get.
Yeah.
Her and Jamie under a... sort of rubble just wasn't good enough for me.
Yeah, but yeah, it's an incredible moment, the Walk of Shame, because it just goes on and on, and you feel it. You do. There is a modicum of you feeling bad for her. I think at certain points you get to a point. I think because it goes on for so long, and because it is quite, it is graphic. You see her in, full frontal nudity and all that. And I know it wasn't her. It was a body double and everything, but it's still quite shocking. That whole sort of High Sparrow and this sort of extremist group it seemed to come out of nowhere, but it was such a fascinating storyline, and it really did sort of knock Cersei for 6. But yeah, she did deserve it still.
One of the if you go to the Game of Thrones exhibition that they've got near Belfast, they've got the actual they're not body doubles, but they're the maquettes, if you like, or the models that they used for that scene at the end with Jamie, and they were just head to toe, like waxwork figures, if you like.
Yeah,
but they're in glass cases. And you just you see them and you think that's just the actors asleep in these cases. They look amazing to the point that you can get sort of, a foot away from them and look at every pore on their face. I mean, Jamie's a lot shorter than I thought he was from looking at him when he's led down. But the detail is just incredible. And that's what they used for that scene of putting all the rubble on them. They were like two... like waxwork figures, if you like that. Well, they obviously weren't wax, but...
wow.
Yeah, crazy. Okay, so that was my number 6. So we're halfway through. It's time for this.
Quiz, hot shot.
Yes, pop quiz, hot shot. Okay, Peter, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 10 characters from Game of Thrones. You need to tell me how they died.
Right.
Okay, and I need specifically how they died, not what particular circumstances they were in, just the act of them dying is what I need, okay?
Okay.
So first of all, number 1, Khal Drogo. How did he die?
Khal Drogo, he was poisoned and died on he was poisoned.
No.
Is that not specific enough?
He didn't die from poisoning, no.
Did he not? Oh no, he was suffocated.
By
he was by Daenerys.
I will give you that one, yes. Daenerys smothered him in a mercy killing after a spell by Miri Mazdur left him in a catatonic state. So so it was Daenerys that actually killed him. Number 2, you should get this one because we've spoken about this one. Ramsay Bolton.
He was eaten by his own dogs.
He was eaten by his own dogs. Number 3, Stannis Baratheon.
He was executed by Brienne of Tarth.
Well done. 3 for 3. Hodor.
Hodor was killed by the White Walkers.
Is correct. I mean, it did say online he was eaten by White Walkers, but I don't think we actually see that, do we? But we know that he got killed by White Walkers. Okay. Missandei.
Missandei. Oh, Missandei. She was beheaded by the Mountain.
Well done. Executed by the Mountain. 5 for 5 so far. Number 6, Tywin Lannister.
Tywin was shot with a crossbow on the toilet.
Correct. By
Tyrion.
Well done. 6 for 6. Could we have our first ever 10 out of 10? Ooh, so, Jorah Mormont.
Jorah Mormont was... he was killed by the White Walkers, hacked and slashed at and stabbed and various different everything. I think they threw everything at him.
I'm going to give you that one. It was while protecting Daenerys. Number 8, Oberyn Martell.
Oberyn Martell was meloned by the Mountain.
That's correct. 8 for 8. Number 9, Shireen Baratheon.
Shireen Baratheon, that's his daughter. She was burnt at the stake.
Correct. Was burnt alive as a sacrifice to the Lord of Light by Melisandre and the Order of the Father, Stannis Baratheon. So, 10 out of 10. I wonder if I've got a drum roll. Olenna Tyrell.
Olenna Tyrell, she was poisoned by Jaime Lannister.
Wow. Well done. That is our first ever 10 out of 10.
Really? Jesus.
Our first ever 10 out of 10. You don't get any extra points for it, unfortunately.
All right.
But well done. You now go top of the leaderboard, although we don't have a leaderboard either. But then it doesn't matter. Well done. Well done,
Thank
Peter.
you.
10 out of 10.
Well, I think you did help me a little bit on that first one. That's a bit dubious, but I'll take it.
I think you should take it. Absolutely, you should take it. Well done. 10 out of 10. I don't know what else to say about that. I'm so impressed.
I'm quite impressed with myself, to be honest.
Yeah, so you should be. Okay, back to the game and the job in hand. We need your number 5 then, please.
Okay, so number 5. This may be on your list. I don't know. I think it might be. So it's from season 4, episode 2, entitled "The Lion and the Rose," and this is, I believe, it's called "The Purple Wedding" and Joffrey's death.
That's my number 4. That is my number 4. Yeah, had to be in there.
Yeah, and I mean, it really comes out of nowhere. This is the second episode of season 4, and it just comes out of nowhere. And I think Game of Thrones does this really effectively. It doesn't leave the big moments for season openers or season finales.
Yeah,
you get them when you get them, and this is it just comes. You know, you're expecting to have Joffrey there for the long haul, and he's going to be, you know, the proverbial bastard to beat, really. And there's all these variables at play. You know, it's the wedding. There's all the family there. The storytelling from Sansa's point of view and getting her out of there, and Tyrion being accused of doing it there and then. You know, and just the brutality of his death, really. You know, and this was one I thought, I mentioned earlier. I thought that this was maybe he got away quite lightly. But then when you rewatch it, it is just horrible. You know, the blood pouring out of his nose and his eyes, and the fact that he's gone purple. You know, he's really suffering in that moment. Especially when, you know, you get to a later scene where Olenna's talking about it and admitting that she did it. And she's, you know, she says that I'd hate to be suffering like your son, and I didn't expect it to be that horrible. But like I say, you've just got so much going on in that moment. You know, Jaime's there, and he knows that Joffrey is his son, and he's got to sit and watch his son die as well as Cersei. And it's just an incredible moment, and it's such a shock as well.
And as much as I said that, like, Ramsay Bolton was a real satisfying death, I think Joffrey's is the most satisfying death. You know, I mean, Cersei would have been if it had been a different way in the final episodes, but and also the fact that, like, a series 4 episode 2, that should be a filler episode. Yeah, it should be just, let's move the plot, not have one of, like, the main baddie at that point be the one that just dies. And it was, again, another one of those shocking sort of the subversion that you wasn't expecting it, you know. And like you say, it's violent, it's horrible. You wouldn't want your worst enemy to die that kind of death. No. But it was satisfying to watch. And
I think because he's so, you know, his own wedding to this gorgeous woman that he's now married to and everything, and he's just full of piss and vinegar at that point. Yes. And it is just perfect. It's the perfect ending for him, because he's putting down Sansa at this point still, and Tyrion, he's making jokes about their wedding night because they've got married as well. So it's like, yeah, fuck you. You go in.
Exactly. Okay, so that's now our 4th duplicate there. So that was your number 5. My number 5 was The Hound versus the Mountain, series 8, episode 5, The Bells. So your number 4 then, Peter.
Well, I mean, this is another defining moment. So this is going back to season 1, episode 9, entitled Baelor, and this is Ned Stark's death.
That's my number 2. That's my number 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what more can you say about this? You know, again, the expectation is that Sean Bean is probably the most famous person in this series at this point. He's the guy that we've followed for the most part through the entirety of the first series.
Well, all of the advertising was Sean Bean. It was all that it was his show, and he was the star of the show. That was the thing that got me more than anything else.
And we are following him. You know, there's points where it's all sort of bitting and bobbing, but the main thread of the first series is Ned Stark and his story, and where he's going to fight the good fight for us. And you know, we get to this point where he's going to be sent to the wall, and you know, that's where he's going to fight from now. He's got to sort of do that battle, and he's going to, you know, end up believing in the White Walkers, and then he's going to have to lead that charge from that end. This is going to be epic and everything else, and then just bang, like that, he is gone. And it's, we've known that Joffrey is this bastard from the start, but he's been reined in by his mother and the people around him. But again, at this moment, so full of piss and vinegar, he's like, no, I'm not going to listen to these women. I'm going to do what I want to do, and the right thing to do is to cut Ned Stark's head off. And again, just it's simple, but it's so brutal. His daughter's there in front of him, another one in the crowd, and it's just such a shocking moment. But it just fits so right to the series. And
that was the point for I know for myself and my wife, that then it was like, well, then everybody can die in this show. It doesn't matter whether you're very famous or whether you're not famous. If they're gonna, and it wasn't even the final episode of the season, so it wasn't even a finale kind of gimmick of look at what's happened in the final episode, you've got to watch next season. This was the episode before the final episode. So everything was up for grabs. Then you think, well, then nobody's safe. If Sean Bean's going to get his head cut off in episode 9 of the first season, then what the fuck is going to happen to anybody else? Everybody else can die. So I completely agree. That's why I had it at number 2, because for me it's what made Game of Thrones something different to other shows. With the fact that now you could go through every episode, and it's shows like that, and Walking Dead when they were at the top of their game, that you could, what you couldn't see in the shot could kill you. It might be a gun, it might be an arrow, a sword, but if you can't see it in the shot, all of a sudden there might be a quick cut and your head's chopped off, or you get a bullet in the brain. So it just leaves you on edge all the time. And that was the start of it, especially in Game of Thrones, without a doubt. Okay, my number 4 was Joffrey is Poisoned, Series 4, Episode 2. So your number 3 then, please.
Okay. Well, it's another big moment. So this is from Series 3, Episode 9, The Rains of Castamere, The Red Wedding.
Okay.
So, I mean, just again, it's just an epic piece of filmmaking. From that moment the door closes and the music starts, which I believe is the piece called The Rains of Castamere, if I remember rightly, which is the song of House Lannister, I believe. It's just superb, absolutely superb piece of storytelling, and again another long scene that I watched it again today, and I can't fathom how long that scene goes on and how much brutality is in it. We get the idea that that she's sort of seeing that there's something wrong, there's something not quite right. And she sort of raises up the sleeve of Bruce Bolton, and from there you have a pregnant woman being stabbed in the belly. You've got a son being killed in front of his mother, and everything in that episode, everything in that scene is brutal, horrible, and completely shocking. And it's a historic moment, I think.
Now, controversially, I'm going to say now, it isn't in my top 10.
All right.
It isn't in my top 10 because I find that scene really hard to watch. And you're absolutely right in everything you say. It is a great scene, brilliantly directed, brilliantly acted. I find it so hard to watch that, again, like I say, it's controversial because I think it should be in the top 10, somewhere in the top 10. But I genuinely, if I ever see it on a YouTube timeline or I will just scroll past it because I just cannot physically watch that. And I can pretty much watch anything. I'm quite happy to watch, sex and violence or whatever. But there's just something about that, and the fact that the mother gets killed at the end.
It's
with
nasty.
the chilling.
It's a mean-spirited scene.
And with the chilling, the Lannisters send their regards or whatever it is. It's just, and she is broken because she's seen her son like die in front of her. It should be in the top 10. I know, and you're absolutely right to put it in your top 10 at number 3. But for me, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't put it in there. So
fair enough, understandable.
There you go. My number 3. Now this is a little bit. This isn't one specific moment, but for my number 3, I'm going to put in Tyrion Lannister or Peter Dinklage.
Okay.
Because I feel like he is. If there's a man of the match of the whole Game of Thrones series, I think Tyrion Lannister is that character. I think the arc that he has, the comedy that he shows, the fact that he will stand up for himself and the people that he loves, the fact that right at the end he still sheds tears for Cersei and for Jaime when he finds their bodies, but then also has the nobility to then forge the new age, if you like, at the end. I think Peter Dinklage is just fantastic in Game of Thrones. I like him. I liked him in Elf. I thought he was great in that. So I really think that he needed to be sort of just to have a little bit of a thing about him. It's not one specific moment; it's every moment that he's in. So it's probably a little bit of a cheat. But I'm going to put Tyrion Lannister in, Peter Dinklage in as number 3. Okay, your number 2 then, please, Peter.
So number 2 for me, it's one of my favourite episodes. It probably is my favourite episode, actually. Season 5, episode 8, called Hard Home. And this is the resurrection of the dead by the Night King. I mean, it's just another one of those gut punches, really, that sort of comes out of nowhere because, we're aware that these, these White Walkers have got some kind of magical powers, and the assumption is that these big white, the Whites, I think they're called, which are the sort of boss versions of the White Walkers, that he's taking the babies from Craster and they're turning them into these super White Walkers and stuff. But the assumption is that they've just turned other people and stuff like that, but you don't really expect it on this scale. That there's this epic battle at Hard Home, and I think most people would probably say the Battle of the Bastards, but I think it is the fight scene of the whole series. I think it's the most epic piece of action filmmaking that's in the series as a whole. And we get to the point where they've had all the, Jon Snow and the wildlings and the rest of the Night's Watch have had to, run for it, basically, pile everybody into the boats as quick as they can and get away, or leaving just the carnage behind, literally bodies just on the shore that have just been slain in moments. And then the Night King steps out on the pier, and just with this raise of his arms, every single person that has been killed gets back up and becomes part of the White Walker army. And it just means so much then. It's like this, however hard we battle these people, whoever we lose is then going to be against us. And it just raises those stakes so much higher. And it is a moment where you just sort of you're with Jon Snow, because I don't think, again, Kit Harington is probably not the best actor on the show, but there's moments where he really portrays things with his face that is quite special.
You can feel that deflation, can't you? It's like they've just gone to hell and back and killed all these people and won, basically. They'd won the battle. And
there'd be, there's such an expectation in that moment. Most other, filmmakers or directors or whoever, showrunners even, would put a big piece of bombastic music in there, something like that. But they don't. It's silent. You're just hearing the wind and the waves, and just seeing the boat pull away slowly. And it's like, you're fucked, basically.
Yeah. That's a good one. That is a good one. Again, that's one that should probably be in my top 10. It hasn't made it in my top 10, but it was, it's one of those, you feel that despair when you see the Night King, and you think, well, how are they going to win? Because everybody that they kill, all he's got to do is do that, and then all of a sudden they're going to be fighting them again. And oh yeah, it's so good, so good. Okay, my number 2 was The Execution of Ned Stark, Series 1, Episode 9. So before we reveal our number 1s, if you want to let us know what your 10 to 2 was, I'll do the same, and then we'll tell everyone our number 1s.
Okay, so my number 10 was Clegane Bowl. Number 9 was Jaime pushing Bran out of the window. 8 was Littlefinger's execution. 7 was Viper versus the Mountain. 6, Arya killing the Night King. Joffrey's death at number 5. Ned Stark's death at number 4. The Red Wedding at number 3. And the Resurrection at Hardhome was number 2.
Lovely. And mine is number 10, The Death of Ramsay Bolton. 9, The Wall Falls. 8, Littlefinger's execution. 7, Arya kills the Night King. 6, Cersei's Walk of Shame, more like. Oh dear. 5, The Hound versus the Mountain. 4, Joffrey is poisoned. 3, Tyrion Lannister. And 2, The Execution of Ned Stark. So Peter, what is your number 1 moment of Game of Thrones?
Well, as I mentioned with the Red Wedding and that scene in particular being just a great piece of filmmaking, I think this one just goes that one better. And we're going to Series 6, Episode 10, entitled The Winds of Winter. And this is Cersei blowing up the Sept of Baelor. Now, again, just the moment that kid comes in and cuts the back of Lancel's leg, I'm assuming it's his Achilles or something like that.
Yeah.
It just builds and builds and builds and builds, and you are in that moment. The music, in particular for that scene, elevates it so high and pulls you straight into the scene. The effects are just amazing. You've got this arc of the High Sparrow that has been happening over this season, and it's just that kind of comes out of nowhere because it's this block for Cersei, and her whole demeanor as queen, and the loss of power that she has just from this religious extremist group, which is so simple but it's so effective in taking power away from her. And then in this scene, you've got Marjorie's intelligence, who's trying to sort of play the game with the High Sparrow and trying to, because she wants Cersei to be taken out of power as well, and just this whole I can't think of the word. What's the word? This whole sort of melee that's going on, and it's like the High Sparrow's like, well, it doesn't matter because of the guy. She's like, well, just if she's not here, there's a reason that she's not here. She knows that she's got to be here, and this intercut with Lancel, dragging himself the length of this chamber to get to what we can see is very clearly wildfire, with this candle just going down so ever so slowly, and you know what's going to happen, but it still doesn't make it any less shocking than it is, and it's just epic. The whole thing just goes up. We're focused in on the High Sparrow and Marjorie's face. Everything is just so close up as well. You were in that moment, and this is like the start of the episode as well. This isn't like, again, it's not the end of the series. It's not the final thing that we see to take us out of season 6. This is the first 10 minutes of the episode.
Yeah.
And it's just incredible. It's so shocking. I don't see it coming, but then it's like, it makes perfect sense. Cersei, is going to do exactly what she needs to do, even if that means, blowing up half the half of her people that are in the red, not the Red Keep. What the hell's the place called? It's completely gone out of my head now.
I know what you mean there.
King's Landing, of course it is. Half the people in King's Landing. She just does not give a shit, and it just does it in epic fashion. Absolutely.
And it's great because the High Sparrow and Marjorie, just a split second before it explodes, they look at each other like they know they think, oh, we're fucked.
Yeah,
we're fucked. That's why she's not here. We're fucked. Yeah, it is a great one. It is a great one. But I will say you've won in regards to. So you've got 10 out of 10 for the quiz, and you've won Lisa's challenge as well. So well done, because we did get 5 the same. Because the only way it was gonna be 6 is if we both had the same number 1, which we haven't. Yeah. Although I have got the episode before that. I have got the Battle of the Bastards, and it's Jon Snow and the Battle of the Bastards. And if there's ever an iconic shot, it's Jon Snow holding his sword up with the marauding sort of enemy just coming towards him. And that whole moment, and then he's fighting, and then he gets caught under all of the mountains of bodies, and he can't breathe, and he's that from that moment up to the moment when Ramsay's being eaten by his dogs, and the fact that when he's approaching Ramsay and Ramsay's firing arrows at him, and he's getting closer to him, and then just punches him and is ready to kill him. I think he has his hands around his neck or something, and then someone comes and stops him. That whole moment, I mean, that is just cinematic to the max. And it was a great moment. And in a while back, we did our top 10 TV episodes, and that whole Battle of the Bastards episode was in my top 10 of greatest TV episodes of all time, because it just epic, like you said earlier on. So I had to be there. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
You're a full winner on everything today. So I'd go and buy yourself a lottery ticket if I
were. I better do,
okay, before we say our goodbyes, let's run through these honourable mentions. On Blue Sky, at 66 Slug said the demise of Littlefinger. Doug Simpson on Facebook said favourite line is still Locke, played by Noah Taylor, says who the fuck's Jon Snow. Also Tyrion's trial, his massive rant followed by demanding trial by combat. Paul Osgood said, spoiler alert, Ned Stark getting executed. And Stuart Turvey said the first time the Lannister army encounters the Dothraki, and then Daenerys appearing riding a dragon. That was another good moment. Carl Lindval on Threads said, easy, Battle of the Bastards. Carol Keckers on Threads, Battle of the Bastards. I stopped breathing, she said. Well, I hope you started breathing a little bit afterwards. That'll be fine. Fred Blags94 said the Knights of Vale arriving at the Battle of the Bastards, or Jon Snow figuring the White Walker at Hardhome. Also, King of the North both times. Ducky_Poos, when Sansa stitches up Littlefinger, the change in his face from him being all smug and smirking, thinking his plan had worked, then realising he had been royally fucked was beautiful. Andrew Ozzy Osborne says best has to be Joffrey suffering and dying in the Purple Wedding. Shocking has to be the Red Wedding. Saddest was Hold the Door. Barbara Guerra Mascal says when Brienne is made a knight. And VHS Abyss Chris on X said the Night King raises the dead at Hardhome. There you go. So
there was a few there, actually. I mean, sorry, I'm interrupting you. Sorry.
No, you carry on.
Well, I had a few honourable mentions of my own, if
Go on
I
then.
may.
Yeah, you carry on.
Because these were very close, and it was quite a hard list for me to come up with, because there's some real crackers.
Yeah.
Obviously, Elena Tyrell's confession, just because it's just a superb performance.
Yes.
And that was very, very close. And Arya killing Meryn Trant, which, when we talk about well-deserved deaths, that is probably the most well-deserved death, because he really does suffer, and he's an absolute despicable human being for a number of different reasons. Ramsay Bolton's death we talked about, and Barristan Semley quitting like a boss.
You have to remind me who that is.
He's the one who goes to join Daenerys, and they basically he was the leader of the Night's Watch in I can't remember the actor's name. It's completely gone out of my head. But they basically say he's too old and can't protect the king, and he tells them to get fucked, basically.
That's right.
Quite epically.
That's some good ones. Yeah. So we've done it, Peter. You've cleaned up, is what I'll say in regards to the quiz side of it all and the challenges. So what have you got coming up on your on your pod?
Well, we've just started a sort of run of 4 episodes with some special guests. So normally on the main duel episodes, we have either myself against one of my co-hosts or 2 of the co-hosts against each other, and I just sort of sit in judgment. But we've got some special guests coming on the next run of episodes. So some other podcasters, some family members of my co-hosts coming on as well. We've got best time travel movie coming up. We've got best Agatha Christie adaptation. We've got best Robin Williams fantasy. And best carry-on film.
Oh, God. You see. Well, we've done our top 10 carry-on films.
Well.
Oh, my goodness. That's why I will be listening to that one. I will be listening. I want to see whether my number one is in your choices. I listen to a carry-on film every night when I go to sleep.
Really?
It's the way I go to bed, yeah.
I used to listen to Blackadder episodes.
Right.
To get me to sleep, and I still do every now and then, but there's normally something.
Yeah,
but that's nice to know I'm not alone in that little.
It's weird to think that like Sid James going ha 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 is like having a baby's dummy to me.
does the boing of Barbara Windsor's bikini not wake you?
Oh no, it's so comforting to hear that boing, and it's. Just never thought I'd be saying that today. But we will put the links to all of Peter's podcasts in the show notes, so please go and check them out. And also remember to listen at the end of the episode for Neil telling you all about all the different things that we've got going on, social medias and Patreon, which of course, again, thank you to Christina for being our latest Patreon subscriber. And we will be talking to Christina in the near future on her own episode. And apart from that, just check everything in the show notes. And that will do it for today. So, Peter, it's been a real pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure to be here, Puff. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great fun.
Thank you very much for everybody for watching and listening. Now let's go start the countdown.